トビデオ
A few weeks ago, I was browsing Twitter and I saw a post by one of my fellow compatriots in the anime history game, please give her a follow, about how 1998 is the worst year in anime. And you know what? I have to agree with her. Now, I know what y'all are saying. KB, you bonehead, 1998 is a great year for anime. It was the year we got Cowboy Bebop, Cardcaptor Sakura, Serial Experiments Lain, and the OG Trigun anime among others. That year was nothing but wall-to-wall classics, to which I respond with, classics, yes. Wall-to-wall, not by a long shot. Every pop cultural medium is prone to off years, whether it be through changing trends, unforeseen financial troubles, or just bad timing, and the existence of good media in those years doesn't change that. For example, 1974 is considered by many critics and music historians to be one of the worst years for popular music. The releases of Diamond Dogs, Pretzel Logic, fulfilling Niss's first finale, and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway are cold comfort in the face of songs like Ray Stevens' The Streak stinking up the airwaves. Or how about 2005 for movies? Sure, you had Batman Begins, Brokeback Mountain, and History of Violence, but movies like those were islands in a sea of forgettable blockbusters, subpar remakes, and outright garbage. My point is that classics can spring forth in any year, even the bad ones. And when you really take a step back and look at what the anime landscape was like in 1998, it's a miracle good anime came out of that year at all. Sure, you can argue that there are worse years for anime like 1982 and 2009, but 1998 is worthy of study because of how so many factors contributed to it being the worst year in anime. 1998 was a perfect storm of badness. You had the 1997 Asian financial crisis tearing through an already economically vulnerable Japan. You had formerly stalwart franchises petering out with lackluster final installments. You had the industry being forced to play catch-up with Hideaki Anno and his Evangelion monster with their own also-ran ripoffs. And all of this is coming down as the anime industry is being forced to grapple with both the traditional cell method of animation being phased out for the new digital method, and an emerging global audience as the medium's influence begins to stretch across the Pacific. The consequences of all these is a mountain of mediocre to bad anime being produced all within this year. Remember, this is the same year where we got two all-purpose cultural catgirl Nugu Nugu titles, and both were terrible for entirely different reasons. It's no surprise after this year the anime industry spirals into a doldrums that it would not emerge from until 2002. There are so many things we can focus on when talking about 1998 in anime, but the area we'll be focusing on right now is one that I have talked about in the past, the death of the OVA era. I talked about it before in my Ayane's High Cake video that the OVA market was in a state of decline and is most likely to blame for that anime's failure. But 1998 is when we see that decline bear some truly rotten fruits.
Their chapters in history were left unfinished, just as their dreams and inspiration for battle remain unknown.
Ninja Resurrection. The name might not get much of a reaction these days, but long ago, the utterance of such a title would send shivers down the spine of your average otaku. No sooner would the words pass through your lips that every person wearing a Ranma 1/2 shirt would drop their cans of Jolt Cola in shock and shake their fists in barely concealed rage. Ninja Resurrection achieved infamy upon its release of its overseas VHS back in November 11, 1998. In its home country, it represented the failure of a once reliable format that was continuing its deterioration. In America, it was the source of one of the most infamous marketing lies that a production company ever sold to American anime fans. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of both of those things in a few, but now that we have some considerable distance from the time of its last DVD print, 2009 for those keeping track, the question I pose is this: is Ninja Resurrection really that bad? I'm not looking to reappraise this or to vindicate the feelings of the otaku of yesteryear. I am simply taking a look at this anime with fresh 2023 eyes and seeing how much of the negative reaction was towards the anime itself or just the outside forces that gave the anime its tainted rep. That's the mission for today, and we must carry out our duty with discipline. Is Ninja Resurrection really a crime against anime, or is it merely a misunderstood title that has several shadows cast against it?
But now I am
born again!
The story of ninja resurrection goes all the way back to January 4th, 1922, with the birth of author Futuro Yamada. Born Seiya Yamada in Yabu to a family of doctors, he was expected to continue the family business and run the family clinic, especially after his father died and his uncle had to take over. It ended up being a harder road to medical school than he had thought. Barely passing high school, he moved to Tokyo in his Ronin years around 1942 and supported himself by working in a munitions factory. He had successfully avoided conscription into the war effort thanks to pleurisy in his lungs. While he did eventually make it to Tokyo Medical College, that did not last long. He ended up having to evacuate Tokyo during the fire bombings, which ended up giving him a very nihilistic outlook on life. On the eve of Japan's surrender, friends urged him that Japan had no choice but to fight to the last man, woman, and child to protect the pride of the Japanese Empire. He simply responded, "The empire is defeated." Yamada himself said that he felt like a person alienated from society. The only thing that could give him the slightest bit of hope was reading, and it was through that he decided to become a writer. Yamada had actually been writing off and on since middle school, but it was around the post-war era that he decided to pursue it as a full-time career. For the first decade of writing, he mostly stuck with short mysteries and detective novels, mostly as a way to ingratiate himself to Rampo Edogawa, legendary mystery novelist and editor-in-chief in the magazine Jewelry, but also to paint a picture using the devastated post-war society that was now Japan. It was through this that Yamada became one of post-war Japan's premier pulp novelists. But that reputation would not be fully gained until his first runaway success in 1959, when he eschewed the mystery genre in favor of dark historical fantasy with the Koga Ninja Scrolls. Telling the story of a war between ninja clans, the Koga and the Iga, in 17th century Japan, it was a huge hit, with how it focused on characters who each have a unique skill set and strange fantastical powers at their disposal. It has been said that this novel was the forerunner to what we now know as the battle shonen genre of manga and anime. In the face of such success, Yamada continued to do similar ninja fiction under what he called the Ninpocho series, stretching from 1959 to 2001, the year of his death. In between those years, he would publish a trilogy in the series known only as the Yagyu Jubei trilogy, named after the legendary one-eyed samurai of the same name who would serve as protagonist. The first in the series, Yagyu Ninpocho, sold well enough, but it was the second one that got the most attention, if only because it was completely out there. Makai Tensho, or Demon Reincarnation. While the Ninpocho series were known for their grotesque, erotic, and violent subject matter, Makai Tensho took it to a whole new level. It tells of a story of how an old ninja master named Mori Soken has perfected a forbidden ninja art gifted to him by the powers of Satan himself, the ability to resurrect old dead warriors of legend and turn them into his undead subordinates. These would include Spearmaster Hozoin Inshun, Samurai warrior Araki Mataimon, Iaijutsu practitioner Tamiya Botaro, and, most famously, leader of the Shimabara Rebellion, Amakusa Shiro, and Master Swordsman of Legend, Musashi Miyamoto. To put this in perspective for people who aren't familiar with Japanese history, this would be like someone resurrecting Alexander the Great, Jeanne d'Arc, Robin Hood, and Harriet Tubman and having them be soldiers in their army of the damned. And of course, it's up to Yagyu Jubei to put a stop to all this. I don't think I need to tell you that this was both a controversial yet immensely popular story. Despite its status as a pulp novel, literary critics praised how Yamada was able to take the orthodox heroes like Musashi Miyamoto and believably twist them into their antithesis. It would soon be popular enough to be adapted into a popular film in 1981, the Kenji Fukusaku film Samurai Reincarnation. The film ended up making some tweaks to the source material by putting more emphasis on the role of Amakusa, the Shimabara Rebellion, and Mori Soiken's role in it. After all, the rebellion was a significant historical event where the outcome solidified the power of the shogun and successfully made Japan a more isolationist country by driving out Christian missionaries from Portugal. So to emphasize the horror and vengeance stirred up by the outcome of these events, ends up crafting a more potent drama to the proceedings, and Sonny Chiba's memorable role as Jubei certainly helped. With this popularity through adaptation, the path to one done in the animated medium was all but guaranteed, especially after it had gotten a manga adaptation done by storied artist Ken Ishikawa of Getter Robo fame. Sometime in the mid-90s, it would be announced that company Amuse Video would be enlisting Phoenix Animation to produce a 4-volume OVA based off of Yamada's novel, using both the Fukusaku film and the Ishikawa manga as basis. Spearheading the project would be director Yasunori Urata. Not much is known about him other than he had gotten his start as a storyboarder and graduated to episode director like most of his ilk. And, at the time, he had recently made his debut with the forgotten 1996 OVA Legend of the Blue Wolves, which is a pornographic yaoi. He would also go on to direct Sin the Movie and the 2001 Hellsing anime, and the comments I could give on that resume does not fill me with the most confidence regarding Ninja Resurrection's quality.
Look at you. The plot's got you fucked up.
Like you're not.
Though we don't know the specifics, all signs point to Ninja Resurrection being a troubled production. The first episode was released on February 27th. The second and final episode was released exactly 1 year and 1 month later. For perspective, the time it took between the average giant Robo OVA episodes, which were longer and had much more lavish budgets, took around half that time. One theory I have is that it was the victim of the Asian financial crisis that really threw a wrench in a lot of productions around this time period. That, combined with the sales most likely not being able to justify finishing the 4-volume order, meant that Amuse pulled the plug in an attempt to shorten the bath they were taking on this. But while the production in its home country was certainly a show of shit, it was nothing compared to what awaited anime fans overseas. You see, 1998 was the beginning of what I like to call the licensed land rush era. Thanks to Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and Dragon Ball Z bringing anime into the homes of unsuspecting Americans and triggering a wave of newfound fans, production companies rushed to snatch up any license they could to meet the predicted demand. This is my guess as to how a company like ADV wound up with an unfinished anime on their hands. They were either trying to get as much licenses as possible, or it was part of a packaged deal. Regardless of that reason, I think they knew ahead of time that they were stuck with a half-finished product. So in order to make some of the money back on the raw deal they were handed, they would have to engage in some underhanded marketing. If you recall, one of the earliest mainstream successes in American anime fandom was the Yoshiaki Kawajiri-helmed ultra-violent classic, Ninja Scroll. Thanks to it being shown on MTV's late-night adult animation block Liquid Television, it garnered a fast and strong following among anime newbies learning just how awesomely brutal the animated medium can get. ADV took note of this, and when you really think about it, they could easily make a case for Ninja Resurrection being a sequel to Ninja Scroll. After all, Ninja Scroll drew a lot from Yamada's ninja stories in its conception, right down to its title. Plus, the protagonist of that anime is named Jubei, the protagonist of this anime is named Jubei. If you squint hard enough, it can be considered a sequel. But the problem is that Ninja Scroll is not an adaptation of Yamada's stories. Kawajiri and staff were just using those works as inspiration for crafting their own original ninja story. Ninja Resurrection, on the other hand, was an adaptation, so the connection between the two movies are tenuous at best. And of course, you had the simple fact that ADV did not own the license to Ninja Scroll at the time. This did not stop them from utilizing the same font as the Ninja Scroll logo for their Ninja Resurrection logo, emphasizing the protagonist's name Jubei in their marketing, and oh yeah, changing the name from Demon Resurrection to Ninja Resurrection. No doubt, people were royally ticked off that this wasn't a Ninja Scroll sequel, nor was it a complete product, and ADV had successfully pulled the wool over the eyes of everybody. But because they didn't explicitly state that this was a Ninja Scroll sequel, they had plausible deniability. Well, I'm sorry if you heard this was a sequel to Ninja Scroll, but we explicitly said that this was Ninja Resurrection. ADV still tried to save face by saying that there was a possible Ninja Resurrection TV anime being worked on to actually finish the story, but that got cancelled, and my conspiracy brain posits that such an anime might not even have existed. That possibly empty promise did no good to placate the masses. And while ADV won trust back with some high quality XL Saga DVDs, Ninja Resurrection was now doomed to be considered one of the worst anime ever. But even if it is there something we can salvage from it? Even if this being a Ninja Scroll sequel is a bald-faced lie, the film being so tied to this anime's legacy is going to invite some comparison. And I can tell you one thing that Ninja Resurrection shares with Ninja Scroll. It is bloody, bloody, and bloody. A lot of the negative reviews I have come across really took umbrage with the darker elements of the anime. I can see why though. Some pretty gnarly shit happens within these 2 episodes. Bodies getting hacked up by swords, blood spraying everywhere, and the climax of the first episode involves the presentation of the decapitated heads of little children. And that's not even getting into the sexual content, since a big plot point is that the resurrection ritual involves Soiken's daughter Ocho having sex with the dying Amakusa Shiro. A few months later, Soiken then holds a satanic ritual where Ocho is the human sacrifice, and after a lengthy process, a reborn Shiro graphically claws his way out of her naked body like a chrysalis. It's a lot, I will admit. But I can't fully judge the quality of the work by its objectionable material. I may have some qualms with Ninja Scroll's portrayal of women, but I still think it's an excellent anime. And there are good things to be found within Ninja Resurrection. Urata's boarding in some of the scenes are outright cinematic, taking cues from the Chanbara films of old. The most striking of which is the end of episode 1, where we see the aftermath of the Shimabara Rebellion, where a blood-red sun rises over a snow-covered battlefield strewn with the corpses of Christian rebels being feasted on by crows, ending with an arresting shot of Shiro Amakusa's decapitated head resting on top of a golden cross. Ninja Resurrection also goes for a more stylized look than you would think, something we can credit to Big O's own Keiichi Sato as chief animation director and character designer. Not only do you have the exaggerated character designs that feel like they're straight out of an underground comic book, but there's also Sato's usage of shading. Similar to Big O's, the shadows are solid blacks that, when contrasted with light, makes the characters feel more like demons, even the ones who don't become demons. This style of chiaroscuro adds to the tone of the dark subject matter of the anime, because what it is at its heart is a horror movie. Ninja Resurrection is a merging of the real horror of historical events, here being a rebellion that was quashed in a massacre of both soldiers and civilians, and supernatural horror. The source material is presented more as a twisted parody of the Chanbara fantasy, but the anime leans into the darkness of the work, legendary figures being turned into vicious soldiers in Satan's service, all just for one man's revenge that might not even really be revenge so much as it is a naked power grab. The big standout scene on this anime is the aforementioned scene of the decapitated heads of children. Seeing that horrific image is enough for Amakusa Shiro to renounce his peaceful approach and call out to God himself to grant him the power to destroy his enemies. And God answers.
My father has heard me and granted my prayer! My revenge!
And in the middle of all this is our hero Jubei, the one who led the charge of the massacre. Though he did his duty in the service of the shogun as a samurai, he is still haunted by his actions of that day. He is willing to do every trick in the book to survive and serve his lord, but he is clearly not happy about that. Really emphasized that the only way he was able to win against Amakusa and the giant stone dragon the Christian god gifted him was by way of holding those severed heads of children to distract them. Tying it all together is the animation, which is surprisingly good most of the time. The effects draw the eye, the swordplay cuts fast, and the fight choreography is stylish while still being easy to read. Some of the animation is a little inconsistent though, like they utilize some of the classic cost-saving measures, and the portrayal of speed in Ninja Scroll completely flies past Ninja Resurrection's portrayal of speed. But where the anime is good is great, and that's what really matters. Objectively, Ninja Resurrection excels in terms of direction, animation, and presentation. That means that people overrated it when calling it the worst anime ever, right? That means Ninja Resurrection is a good anime, right? Of course it isn't! You probably didn't hear me the first couple of times I said it, so I will reiterate the stone cold facts. This is an unfinished product, an anime that is forever cursed to remain incomplete. And it's not like it's Vagabond where it manages to still be a worthwhile read in spite of its unfinished nature. No, it's unfinished in a way that there's nothing really to salvage from it. The anime ends right as everything has been set up and the plot kicks into full gear. In other words, it ends right at the ending of Act 1. You can easily see how they plotted this out. Episode 1 was the prologue, episode 2 was the setup for the main plot, and the other two that never got made were going to be the middle and the ends. That's the main beef with Ninja Resurrection. It's all set up with zero payoff. But still, it had the potential to be a good anime. I'm sure if Arata, Sato, and the rest had the means, they could have crafted an excellent piece of dark ninja fantasy. But we cannot assess a work by what it could be. We can only assess it as it exists in its current state. And my assessment is that I completely understand why otaku felt profoundly ripped off. Imagine if Hamlet had ended right when the ghost of his father told Hamlet that it was his uncle Claudius who murdered him. That's what this anime feels like. Everything that is set up has zero chance of being followed up on, and it just makes the writing bad by default. Jubei is obviously broken up by the sins he did in the name of duty, leading the fight against the Christian rebels.
How many people have you killed, Jubei?
I don't know.
But because the quest for redemption never shows up, his guilt over leading the slaughter of an oppressed people ends up ringing hollow. Or about how Jubei's master Musashi Miyamoto seems to have similar ulterior motives regarding his plans for Jubei and his possible ties to Soiken. But when we see him in the second episode, he might just be another guilt-ridden third party like Jubei, and that never really gets fleshed out, so it just reads like a character inconsistency. Tons of plot points left forever at the draw of the orphanage with no ending in sight to adopt them. I'm not even getting into Jubei's two female friends who, despite their combat prowess, are obviously being set up as damsel bait, or the complicated relationship Jubei has with his father, or Jubei's quirky ninja team who helps him out in the Shimabara incident, who we never learned their names of because they were clearly supposed to be properly introduced in episode 3. I know this anime wasn't finished, but I am aghast at how unfinished it is. It's like somebody presented me with a beautiful cottage without a floor or a roof. The frontage may look nice, but I can't keep my feet clean or my head dry when it rains. That frontage is not without its own flaws though. Even if this had been finished, I would still have bones to pick with it. Like how it has some jarring shifts in tone with how episode 1 ends on a somber bleak note, and then the second episode kicks off with some stupid kid ninja antics.
Hand over those fish. Hurry, or we'll be late for practice.
Actually, here's some better music. And on the flip side, you can have one scene end with a heartwarming goodbye and some corny jokes about gender straight out of an Inuyasha episode.
Jubei would much rather marry a beautiful princess than a tomboy like somebody I know.
KYOTO, you sure know a lot for your age.
And then immediately cut to a scene of a nameless geisha being raped to death by a zombie demon ninja. Also, though they couldn't have known it at the time, the anime is not paced like it has 2 episodes to tell its story. So many scenes feel stretched to the breaking point, whether they be clandestine conversations by candlelight or that aforementioned violent demon ritual. Yeah, it's horrific, but seeing a naked woman violently convulsed with the spawn of Satan being born goes right to the point where you can say, okay, I get it. Maybe those rough patches would not have been felt as much in the full version of Ninja Resurrection. But that version does not exist, and it never will. I'm pretty sure I've made my case on this anime. Ninja Resurrection is not an anime. It is a symbol of the death of the white-hot OVA era, showing the world that what could have worked 10 years ago or even 5 years ago was no longer a possibility. And all that's left is something that was dumped onto ADV, who then proceeded to dump it onto us through some underhanded marketing. Could Ninja Resurrection have been a good anime, or at the very least, a serviceable one? Maybe. We'll never know. It's not the worst anime of its genre ever, I can attest to that, but its place in history will always be one defined by misleading marketing and unsavory subject matter, all leading up to an abrupt and unsatisfying ending. Just like this video.